Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something really cool,
Yeah.
10 native U.S. species. But we're not just gonna, like list facts about them.
Right.
We're gonna look at how they've dealt with all these, challenges, and,
Yeah.
bounce back sometimes against the odds. So you could kind of think of it as,
Resilience.
yeah, resilience, the American edition.
Love it.
So, I think even if you've heard of some of these plants and animals before,
Right.
I bet we'll uncover some surprising stuff along the way.
Yeah, for sure. It's really fascinating to see how many different ways that,
Right.
resilience shows up in nature. I mean, from
Yeah.
these iconic creatures to these little guys you never really think about.
Yeah.
They all have stories to tell.
And sometimes it's the quiet ones that are the most badass. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Okay, well, let's start with a heavyweight in the resilience department.
Okay.
The American bison. These
Okay.
guys are yeah, the Wild West. I mean, talk
Yeah.
about a symbol of strength and stuff, right?
Oh, totally.
Hmm.
And their story is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
When you think about how close we came to just wiping them out.
Oh, yeah. I remember learning about that in school or something, but
It's wild to think about how there were tens of millions of bison
no.
roaming the Great Plains,
Right, yeah.
shaping the whole landscape. And then by the late 1800s, bam,
Yeah.
overhunting brought them down to just a few hundred individuals left.
It's hard to fathom how a creature that massive and, dominant
Right.
could almost disappear like that.
Yeah.
So was it just that people stopped hunting them, or is there more to it?
Well, that was a huge part of it, of course,
Yeah.
stopping the slaughter. But the thing about bison is they're not just, grazing around randomly.
Yeah.
They're what ecologists call
Mhm.
ecosystem engineers.
Their ecosystem, yeah.
engineers. So basically, their grazing actually creates this really cool mosaic of
Sure.
short grasses and tall grasses, and that benefits tons of different species.
So it's not just about the bison themselves. It's they create these
Exactly.
thingy habitats for everything else.
Yeah. You can think of it as they're making these little bison-created microhabitats for insects and birds and all kinds of creatures.
Wow. So it's not enough to just have bison around. You got to let them actually do their bison thing.
You got it.
That's
It's not
great.
just about numbers. It's about letting them fulfill their ecological role.
This is making me think about conservation in a whole new way,
Yeah, it's more complex than just saying, don't shoot this animal.
Right. It's you got to understand the whole system. Okay, well, speaking of human impact and, almost losing a species,
Yeah.
let's go from the grasslands to the sky and talk about the bald eagle.
Okay. Another classic American icon.
I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't get excited to see a bald eagle, soaring around.
Such majestic birds.
But there was a time when those sightings were incredibly rare.
In the mid-20th century, the bald eagle was facing a whole different kind of threat than the bison. It wasn't hunting. It was
What was it?
this pesticide called DDT.
BDT.
It's widely used, seemed harmless,
Yeah.
at first.
Okay.
But what people didn't realize was that it would accumulate in the food chain.
Oh, right.
And for the eagles at the very top, it was disastrous.
So wait, how does that work? I remember vaguely learning about this accumulating in the food chain thing, but
It's called biomagnification.
yeah.
Imagine a chain, right? Tiny little organisms, they ingest a little bit of DDT.
Mm.
Then small fish come along and eat tons of those organisms.
Yeah.
Bigger fish eat those, and so on and so on.
Okay.
At each level of that food chain, the DDT concentration just keeps increasing.
Oh, wow.
So by the time an eagle eats a contaminated fish,
Right.
it's getting this massive dose of DDT.
That's scary. And they couldn't reproduce, right?
Yeah, exactly. Their eggshells became so thin they would just break during incubation. It was
Yeah.
the foundation of their survival was crumbling.
And the bald eagle is a symbol of America. How did we let that happen?
It's a tough lesson.
Yeah.
Even with good intentions,
Yeah.
we can have these huge unintended consequences on the environment. But the good news is
Yeah.
people got really fired up about saving the bald eagle.
Makes sense.
Public outcry and the ban of DDT
Right.
really helped them make a comeback. It shows how powerful awareness and action can be.
From almost silent to a symbol of resilience. Okay, well, let's switch gears a little bit. We've
Yeah.
talked about these majestic creatures,
Yeah.
but resilience comes in all shapes and sizes.
Right,
Like the
yeah.
American alligator.
Oh, yeah.
I'll admit, those guys give me the creeps a little bit,
I get it.
But they're way more than just teeth and jaws, right?
They're actually a perfect example of what ecologists call a keystone species,
Keystone species.
meaning that their impact on their environment is way bigger than you'd expect just based on their size.
Okay, so how does that work with alligators?
Well, they create these things called gator holes.
Gator holes.
Yeah. They're like these depressions in the ground that hold water even during droughts.
So it's like they're providing a service to other animals.
Exactly. They're like the unintentional landlords of the swamp, providing these essential resources.
Uh-huh. I love that. So it's like fish and turtles and all sorts of creatures can survive because of these gator holes.
It's a great example of how even a creature that we might fear or find creepy
Right.
actually plays this vital role in the web of life.
Okay, well, speaking of unexpected heroes, let's move from the swamps to somewhere a little more familiar.
Okay.
I'm talking about the eastern gray squirrel.
Oh, yeah.
Adorable, right? Always causing mischief in the backyard.
They're everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
But their main contribution is basically just being cute, right?
Oh, you would be surprised. Don't underestimate the power of the squirrel.
Okay.
I mean, they might seem like they're just obsessed with nuts, but they're incredibly important for forests.
Really?
Yeah, they're like accidental foresters. Their seed dispersal helps maintain a diversity of trees, even if it's a bit random.
So, like those nuts they bury and forget about are actually planting the trees of the future.
Pretty much. It makes you wonder how many trees owe their existence to a squirrel with a bad memory.
That's pretty cool. And I guess their adaptability is another part of their success story, right? Like they've learned to live alongside us pretty well.
For sure. You see them in parks and cities all over the place.
Hmm.
They're demonstrating a different kind of resilience than like the bison or the eagle, you know.
But is that always a good thing? Like we've all seen squirrels raid bird feeders and, cause a little chaos.
Uh-huh. That's true.
Is there such a thing as too much squirrel resilience?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, their success does raise some interesting points about how human-altered environments can change things
Right.
and whether abundance always means a healthy ecosystem.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, well, let's go from the small and adaptable to the absolutely massive.
Yeah.
The California redwood. I've seen pictures, but it's like you can't really grasp the size of those trees.
They're awe-inspiring. Imagine standing at the base of a tree that's older than the Roman Empire.
Wow. It's like touching living history.
And their size isn't just for show, you know. It actually ties into their role in combating climate change.
Wait, giant trees fighting climate change. How does that work?
They're champions of carbon sequestration.
Carbon what?
Sequestration. It basically means they absorb and store tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
Oh, okay.
And because they're so massive, they can lock away that carbon for centuries.
So it's like they're giant air purifiers for the planet.
That's a great way to put it. And they're working on a timescale that we can barely wrap our minds around.
That's mind-blowing. So protecting these forests isn't just about, like, preserving beauty. It's about protecting this vital climate system.
Exactly. It shows how interconnected everything is. You know,
Yes.
a species survival is linked to the health of the planet as a whole.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dive into more of these incredible resilience stories. What's next on our list?
Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about a creature that embodies resilience in a quieter but equally important way.
Okay.
The monarch butterfly.
Oh, yeah. Those guys are amazing. I mean, that whole migration thing is just mind-boggling.
It really is.
Mm.
Imagine something so delicate traveling thousands of miles.
Right. It's like a superpower or something. But I know their journey is getting tougher and tougher these days. It's not just the distance.
I know it's not. You see, the monarch's dependence on milkweed is kind of a double-edged sword.
Okay. How so?
Well, on one hand, it's a brilliant evolutionary strategy. You know, monarch caterpillars, they only eat milkweed,
Right.
which makes them toxic to predators.
Pretty smart, right?
Yeah. But that's where the double-edged sword comes in, I guess.
Exactly. Because if something happens to the milkweed,
Oh.
the monarchs are in big trouble. And that's what's happening now as we convert more land to agriculture in urban areas. Milkweed is disappearing.
So it's like they put all their eggs in one basket, evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah, and we're taking away that basket. It's kind of a scary thought, like our actions can have these unintended consequences on creatures we don't even think about.
It's a good reminder that even the smallest creatures are connected to the larger web of life.
It makes you think twice about, like, spraying pesticides and stuff.
Definitely. Okay, well, let's move from the delicate to the, well, let's be honest, kind of creepy.
Uh-huh. Okay, which one are we talking about?
The prairie dog.
Oh, yeah. I know they're supposed to be, like, ecologically important, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I still kind of think of them as, like, little groundhogs, causing trouble.
Uh-huh. They do have a bit of a PR problem, don't they?
Yeah.
But those troublesome burrows are actually vital to the prairie ecosystem.
Really?
Think of them as like Miniature ecosystem engineers, just like the bison.
Okay, I'm listening.
Their digging aerates the soil, it
Mhm.
helps water soak in better, and it creates all these different habitats for other creatures.
So those underground cities we talked about are more like bustling ecological hubs.
Exactly. It's amazing what's going on beneath the surface.
Out of sight, out of mind, as they say. What kind of creatures are we talking about, though? Like, who benefits from these prairie dog
Oh,
burrows?
tons of different species.
Yeah.
Burrowing owls, snakes, rabbits,
Yeah.
even black-footed ferrets, which are one of the most endangered mammals in North America.
Wow. So prairie dogs are like supporting this whole underground community.
It's a reminder that diversity and complexity exist even in places we might not think to look.
Okay, well, from the bustling prairie to the quiet stillness of a pristine stream, let's talk about the brook trout.
Okay, those are some beautiful fish.
I love those guys. They're like living jewels, you know?
And their beauty is directly tied to the health of their environment.
Yeah.
Brook trout are super sensitive to pollution and habitat degradation.
So if you find brook trout in a stream, that's a good sign.
It's a great sign. They're like a canary in the coal mine for freshwater ecosystems.
That's interesting. So they're like a living indicator of water quality.
Exactly. And because they're at the top of the food chain in a lot of these streams, their presence or absence can tell us a lot about the whole ecosystem.
It's like a domino effect, right?
Yeah,
If the brook trout disappear, it can trigger all these changes.
you got it. Which brings us back to human impact again. What are the biggest threats to brook trout populations?
Well, I'm guessing pollution is a big one.
Definitely. Pollution from agriculture and urban runoff is a huge problem.
What else?
Habitat fragmentation is another issue. Things like dams and culverts. They can block the trout's movement and prevent them from reaching their spawning grounds.
Oh, right. I hadn't thought about that. And then there's climate change too, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, warming water temperatures are a big concern for cold water fish like brook trout. It's a complex web of challenges for sure.
It's a lot to think about. Okay, well, let's move from the water to the woods and talk about a creature that evokes a mix of awe and caution.
Okay, which one?
The American black bear.
Oh, yeah. They're definitely impressive animals.
Intelligent, adaptable.
And powerful. You definitely don't want to mess with a black bear.
Uh-huh. No kidding. But we talked about their role as seed dispersers earlier, right? Like how their foraging habits help forests regenerate.
Yeah, it's amazing how something as simple as a bear eating berries can have such a positive impact.
It's like they're accidental gardeners.
Pretty much. And it highlights the importance of large mammals in maintaining ecosystem health.
It's like we tend to focus on the cute and cuddly or the majestic and awe-inspiring and forget that even the seemingly scary or intimidating creatures have a role to play.
Right. Every creature has its place.
Okay, well, speaking of fascinating adaptations, let's talk about the yucca plant. I'm always amazed by how life finds a way to thrive in even the harshest environments.
Oh, the yucca is a perfect example.
Mm.
It's evolved to survive in these arid deserts with its sharp, spiky leaves and these deep root systems that can access water far below the surface.
It's like a botanical fortress built to withstand anything the desert can throw at it.
And there's more to the story than just its toughness, you know?
Okay, what else is there?
You're thinking about the yucca moth, right?
Oh, yeah. Isn't that one of those like coevolution things?
That's a classic example.
Huh.
The yucca moth is the only pollinator of the yucca plant.
So they need each other to survive.
Exactly. The female moth collects pollen from one yucca flower and deliberately deposits it on another, ensuring fertilization.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And in return, she lays her eggs inside the yucca flower, and her larvae feed on some of the developing seeds.
It's like a perfectly choreographed dance, you know, each partner playing this crucial role in the other's survival.
And it all happens in this harsh desert landscape. It's a reminder that even in the most extreme places, life finds a way to connect and thrive.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but we have a few more fascinating creatures to meet.
I'm ready for the final leg of our journey. Each species we've encountered adds another layer to our understanding of resilience and interconnectedness.
Welcome back to our deep dive. It feels like we've journeyed all across America.
We have from prairies to forests, swamps to deserts.
And we've seen how resilience comes in so many forms. It's not just about being tough, you know?
Right, it's about adapting, working together, and finding ways to thrive even when things get tough.
It's like nature throws these curve balls and these species just knock them out of the park.
I like that analogy.
So for our last few species, I want to focus on what we can learn from their stories, you know?
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
Like, what can we do to help these incredible creatures continue to thrive?
It's a question we should all be asking.
Okay, so let's start with the bald eagle.